Late summer 1940, the Battle of Britain. The skies of England are awash with warplanes as the Luftwaffe and the Royal Air Force battle for dominion of the skies. Nearly 3,000 pilots from around the globe fight on the British side. In 1972, a document is released by the British Official Secrets Act, but remains buried in the National Archives until the summer of 2008. This document indicates there may be at least one more name to add to the list of heroes. According to the long-lost report, Spitfire pilot officer C.S. Mitchell, an American or possibly Canadian pilot, was reported lost over the channel on the final day of the battle. Why this document would be sealed for over 30 years and subsequently remain buried is a mystery, especially in the light of a notation indicating that Mitchell was a triple ace, crediting him with over 15 kills against the Luftwaffe. An exhaustive search of the archives uncovered this photograph, which appears to confirm that there was indeed a pilot C.S. Mitchell flying Spitfires during the early days of the war. Official inquiries with the British and American governments resulted in firm denials. No record of Mitchell exists, or ever existed, but a search of private documents and photographs paints a different picture. September 1931. R.J. Mitchell, plane designer for Supermarine Aviation, was engaged in speed trials for the prestigious Schneider Trophy. The plane being tested was the S-6B. On the day of the race, R.J. wrote in his journal, "Today I was approached by an unusual American chap who claimed to have made his fortune shorting the market crash of '29. The man implied he is a distant cousin of mine and introduced himself as Cameron Shafto Mitchell. C.S. promptly produced a raft of banknotes that he called an investment in the future of aviation. He further commented that the S-6B sure looks like a Spitfire. I rather like the name Spitfire. I'm sure we will use it somewhere." Cameron established an enduring relationship with R.J. Mitchell. Abruptly, in December of 1932, Shafto Mitchell set out on what he described as a tour of history. In the following years, Cameron would write to R.J. from various locations around the globe.
May 1932, Newfoundland. Dear R.J., I just said goodbye to Amelia. Yeah, that Amelia Earhart. By the time you receive this letter, she will either have landed safely in France or perished over the Atlantic. If you have a bookie, bet the farm that she comes up short and lands in the UK. Amelia has an impatient nature. The last couple of months in her presence have been wild, hectic, and not a little weird. Besides secretly preparing for the transatlantic crossing, she has been privately impressing upon me the liberal views she takes to her marriage vows. January 1933, Washington, D.C. Watched FDR being sworn in as president. Cold and rainy day, suits the general mood of the country. I doubt the Shrew will pass muster as a warplane. The name alone will kill the project. Suggest moving ahead with the Spitfire. May 1933, India. Dear R.J., met with Mr. Gandhi. Arrived just before his well-publicized hunger fast. Personally, I think he needs to eat more, not less. Some Westerners have inquired as to why I'd want to meet this serious, unassuming sage from the East. Idiots. I can say with some certainty that Mr. Gandhi will prove far more important than many of our puffed-up politicians screaming nationalism. Though I am by no means a pacifist, I could take to wearing the Indian homespun garments. Very breezy. Burma, August, I think, 1933. RJ, sorry for the lapse in writing, though your letters, if you had sent any, would be hard-pressed to find me here. I came to Burma to see the famed tigers. Instead, I have spent the last month convalescing in a squalid hut, recovering from a nasty brush with some subtropical disease. Can't believe this country has no penicillin. January 1934, Hawaii. Debarked here a month ago and have decided I may never leave. At least until, say, 1941. Met a Californian here named Tom Blake. Blake has introduced me to the ancient art of surfing. It's quite thrilling, but it's hard to control the massive hollow boards. I suggested to Blake that perhaps a fin or a skeg might improve control. He rather liked the idea and is experimenting with it. I've also decided it might be fun to take a job, flying the mail between here and the mainland. March 1934, Hawaii. RJ, your letter finally reached me here. Am saddened to hear of your cancer. Suggest you take up flying. Alone in the clouds, no one can give you that "I'm so sorry" look, and you may just find the strength you need to fight this thing. As to the penicillin comment from Burma, I believe it's an experimental drug not widely known about. But remember, I was raving with fever at the time. You can consult a doctor, but I'm not aware that penicillin, if it even exists, will help in your circumstances. March 1935, California. After months of flying back and forth with the mail, I've decided to settle in California. And Amelia's arrival in Hawaii has led to some awkwardness that I think best be avoided. Mid-March 1935, California. Don't write to me here, the mail job finished. And I think it's time to see the rest of the U.S. P.S. Amelia is now making stops in Burbank. April 14th, 1935. Lost somewhere in Oklahoma. Grounded today by the most fearsome dust storm one can imagine. Visibility was reduced to less than 25 feet for most of the day. I barely managed to find a field to put safely down on. 1936. Berlin, the Olympics. Jesse was triumphant for the 4th time. The crowd actually cheered him despite the obvious attempts by the Nazi regime to suppress their excitement. I managed to get a clear view of Hitler. What a putz. Suspect my mail is being read. Translate that, Fritz. New Year's Day. New York, 1937. Drank heavily last night but could not find a way to be merry. The news that your cancer has returned darkens the horizon for the coming year. May 7th, 1937, New York. Yesterday, the Zeppelin Hindenburg floated over the city. I rushed out to Jersey for the landing. I'm sure you've heard the reports, but being on the ground and pulling survivors from the fiery maelstrom has left me shaking. June 10th, Brazil. Word reached me a week ago that Amelia is making her second attempt at circumnavigating the globe. Acquired a Lockheed Vega, but will have to count on Amelia's reckless nature if I am to catch up with her. Next stop, Africa. July 1st, Darwin, Australia. Grounded with mechanical problems. Missed Amelia here by 1 day. Too late. Her plane was reported missing near Howland Island. July 2nd, 1937. Dearest Florence, news reached Darwin today informing me of RJ's passing. I am saddened beyond words. Your husband was a great man, and history will judge his contribution so. It is not always the famous man or woman that changes history. The quiet and humble, the unseen man is often the saving grace of humanity. If you don't hear word of me for some time, please understand there are events for which I must prepare, and I must be silent in my preparations. The shocks of the last few days are teaching me a caution which has often been lacking in my life. All my love and sorrow to you, Colonel Cameron Mitchell.
3 years later, Cameron Shafto Mitchell disappeared over the English Channel.